everybody. Welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. How you doing tonight, Derek?
I'm good, Justin. How are you doing? How was your weekend and your week so far?
It's spring break at my job, so all we're doing is preparing a bunch of MacBook Airs to be given out over the summer. So I've probably touched at least 250 computers today, all doing the same
Wow.
damn thing on them. Yeah. Yours? How was your week?
Uh, my week has been pretty good. I guess it's only Tuesday, so
Don't remind me. I feel like it's been a week already. This
yeah.
week is going by slow.
Yeah, how was your weekend? What'd you do?
Don't remember. Oh, it was nice outside. So I played outside. Like me and my kids, we tossed the football around. We went for walks. Went on a hiking trail. Played outside. Yeah, I like to be outside. I don't
Nice.
like.
But yeah, it was nice this weekend.
Also, we've been kind of excited. Well, not kind of, but we have been pretty ecstatic about the amount of listeners that we've observed over our last 3 episodes. So thank you to all who are continuing to listen, as well as we've gotten some feedback on what we could do better and differently. Much appreciated to those folks as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's good to get that stuff, and I know you and I probably recognize some of this stuff already, and we're kind of already working on it. But just to get that reaffirmation from somebody else, I guess is good to know that that effort isn't being wasted. Um, and then I guess I would say in probably the next month or so, probably hopefully with maybe a month and a half, something like that. Um, I should be getting a computer, which will help the audio quality on my end because I know it's not great. So I'm looking forward to that. Just bear with us a little bit longer, and things should start sounding better here shortly.
I'm gonna do what I can in the meantime on the post end to maybe see if I can't, smooth the audio all out.
It's like they say, you can polish a turd, but it's still a turd. So,
What are you trying to say? Your voice is shitty?
yeah, it sounds that way.
I don't think so. I think you're fine. If anything, it smells like poopery.
Thank you for the dad pun there.
Yeah. I need to get away from dad jokes, but I digress.
Right.
Should we get into this?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, chapter 3. Not a super long chapter, but a ton happens in these pages that we read. What we have, like 20-ish pages or so.
As far as our summary goes, or just overall.
The actual pages in this chapter, I think, was probably about half of what we've read so far for the other two.
Yeah, I want to say it was maybe the high 20s, like 28, 26, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was definitely shorter than the last couple chapters.
A lot of small stuff, though, like lots of things to pick up on and not really, go over with a fine-tooth comb or anything like that, but just lots of small, nuancy things.
Right, and some pretty big stuff, too.
I'll start this shit off. Nah. This segment opens up with Gano's Paran on a motherfucking boat. The timeline is that of the Siege of Pale. Paran is confined to his cabin because he was tired of scanning the horizon for sightings of land. There's also a wooden post in the middle of this table that he's sitting at, but he's been throwing his knife into it. So I imagine he's bored out of his fucking mind. Suddenly, A brush of air is felt on his face, and as he turns to inspect where the gust of air came from, Topper appears through the Imperial Warren, already in a sour mood. I'm assuming it's due to him having to find a ship in the middle of the sea, and it's not as easy as one would think to locate.
I wouldn't think
Gano's
that would be easy at all.
No, not at all. So I mean, I would be in a pretty sour mood having to score all of God's green earth to find a ship, a very specific ship on this massive amount of water.
Right.
But Ganos takes this opportunity and takes a stab at Topper's clothes because they are the same green outfit that he was wearing when they met previously 2 years ago. We also find out that Topper is half Tisti Andi. So what that other half is hasn't been revealed. But he is half Tisti Andi, which, if you recall, are residents of Moonspawn.
Or at least they were on Moonspawn.
Right. Exactly.
I guess I don't know if we know for certain if they came from there, but
True.
They inhabited it.
We know that the Tisti Andi are they're not human. And they are known, or they were mentioned to be they used elder magic, if I'm recalling correctly. That may have only been Amanus, Anamandus Rake. I'm not even saying his name right.
Anamander
Rake. But after some banter is exchanged between the two, Paran asks Topper what his message is, to which he replies, "She's with the bridge burners outside of Pale." Paran asks Topper about Pale's siege and how old is this information he's receiving. Topper explains that the information is a week old and that a deadlock is about to be broken, and then explains that the girl is one of Whiskey Jack's recruits. Ganos Paran, his first thought is, are the gods messing with me? And if so, which one? Because he starts thinking about Whiskey Jack and how he was commanding armies back then, and how he could have stopped Lucine, back when she was named Surly, as well as stopped him from following in his footprints, I believe is what he's referring to there. Kind of going back to that scene on in the prologue. Internally, he calls himself a fool for following Whiskey Jack's dream. Ganos Paran breaks from his thoughts and starts naming Whiskey Jack's previous battles out loud. Topper says that these took place during the old Emperor's days. Paran makes the assumption that he is to take over Whiskey Jack's command. Topper replies with, "Your recruit is showing her powers, and she's corrupted the bridge burners, possibly even Dujek One Arm, and the entire second and third armies on Genabacchus." Ganos, after hearing this, is in a state of disbelief and mentions to Topper that himself and the adjunct were only concerned about the girl. Topper reaffirms with Ganos that he is to continue as planned and that an agent of the Claw will meet him at Pale. He then continues on by saying that his recruit has found her weapon and will strike at the heart of the Empire. Topper takes a stab at Ganos and says that failure cannot be considered if Ganos feels unequal for the task. Ganos has thought to himself about the severity of the situation, and why not just send a Claw if it's that bad? So it's kind of having this like internal dialogue with himself while having this conversation with Topper. Topper explains to Ganos that a god is using the girl and that she won't die easily, and the plan for dealing with her has required some adjustments in the form of expansions. Topper makes the quip that it's time for Dujek One Arm to be disarmed. I laughed so hard at that the first time I read it. But Ganoz asks why. Topper then simply says that he has a following and that One Arm was held to be the heir of the Emperor. Paran quickly calls out Lacine's paranoia to Topper, to which Topper responds that greater men have died for less, and the Empress demands loyalty from her subjects. Ganoz kind of gets pissed and makes a comment about how Lacine should be, about how she should act, to which Topper then gets more sour and simply puts what it is that Ganoz is supposed to do, which is to take over, get close to the girl, do nothing to make her suspicious of Ganoz, and then sit back and wait. Ganoz, while in his thoughts, after hearing this, kind of like zones out. He has a moment of confidence that the recruit must die, but he is reluctant about Whiskey Jack and wonders if it will be Whiskey Jack's blood on his hands. Ganoz continues his thoughts and has the realization that he no longer knew who the ultimate betrayer was. If it was the Empire or the Empress, a legacy, a vision of peace and prosperity for all, Topper snaps Ganoz out of his trance and asks Ganoz if he understands his orders. Ganoz simply looks at him and waves his hand. Topper then opens the Imperial Warren and leaves. I think this page, or this segment, was what, 2.5, 3 pages long?
Something like that, yeah. It wasn't super long, no. But we got a lot of information in those few pages.
Yeah, we certainly did. And, you know, I definitely got a lot of these guys do not like each other. Because Topper is still kind of like expecting Ganoz to maybe have a little bit more of an air of professionalism to him, even after 2 years, because it's been 2 years since the Ito Khan massacre, when he meets Perrin on the road to take him back to, the Ajak Lorn's place in Unta.
One quote in there that you kind of paraphrase. I need to go back and find it here quick, but I thought it was an interesting quote because it was when Topper says greater men have died for less. Basically, Ganoz thinks the thing should be reversed from what he said.
Like, it should be the other way. Like,
yeah, because Topper says that the Empress demands loyalty and expects perfection or something along those lines, and Ganoz thinks it should be reversed. I cannot find it right now. Oh well. Anyways, I thought it was I liked the quote, and it kind of struck with me that if you're a good emperor, empress, you expect loyalty. You don't demand it. If you demand something, especially like loyalty, you're probably not going to be respected. You're ruling out of fear, and I don't think that generally bodes too well.
No, and even in most situations, ruling by fear doesn't really work. I mean, it gets you, can get you, I guess somewhere, but it's not necessarily. Eventually, people are going to get fucking sick of it.
Yeah, it's probably going to lead to what I think this book is going to be leading up to. It's going to be an overthrow of some sort, or at least an attempt.
I feel like, even though this particular segment was only 2.5, 3 pages long, and yeah, it was a lot to surmise, but it didn't really feel like there was a ton like to talk about outside of the summary. Like, this is, here's the order of events, here's some things.
Yeah, it's very point A to point B. I mean, it's just, you're not going back and forth between different events. It's just, this is everything right here.
Right, and this is, taking place at the same time that the siege of Pale is taking place. I would imagine probably a little bit after everything had ended with Tattersail and Hairlock and all of those guys.
Yeah, it's pretty closely wound to that, I think. Yeah, it's could be before, or well, it's got to be before, because he says that the stalemate's going to be broken, or however it was worded. So to me, it sounds like he's on his way. Uh, the massacre has not quite happened yet, but it's about to.
Right. Yes, exactly.
But depending on how long it took him to find him, yeah, I mean, we could be just after it as well. But
Oh
it's
yeah, that's right. It did say it was about 1 week. It was 1 week. It took him to find Gano's on the sea. And he had just gotten the information and then set out to find him after he got that information. That's right. Okay. Yeah. So about a week after the siege of Pale.
Yeah, somewhere in that area. So I mean, the timeline's a little foggy, but I mean, we generally know about what has happened or is very shortly going to be happening, because we've already seen that side of things.
Right. My big question is how does Topper, the Empress, or even Ajak Lorne know that this girl is a god? Like, I know that hasn't. I mean, and maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that hasn't been revealed yet. Like, obviously, up to this point, we've noticed that, like, oh, there's definitely something wrong with this girl, or sorry, but how they have figured out that she is a god, I don't think has been revealed yet.
Or might be.
Or could
She might
be.
not be. I know you're on that boat, and I think I'm kind of on the opposite. I don't know that she is, but there's things just with her age and what she's able to do, that obviously she's not a normal kid.
Right. But that just brings me, but like Riga, I mean, we were introduced to her. Is she a god that was just playing dormant in this small fishing town in Ikito Kan? Was
Could have
she
been, I
like
suppose.
hiding, like, a goddess hiding among mortals? I mean, the sky's the limit as to what it could be, and for whatever reason, she saw something in this girl that, I don't know. I mean, the options are limitless, or endless as to what could be happening.
Yeah, we just don't have enough information yet.
No. But I hate being in that position, because it's like, did I miss something, or am I at the point where, like, I'm right where I'm supposed to be? It's just all a matter of time, Like, I always kind of like doubt myself a little bit. Like, did I miss something? So
Yeah, and it doesn't help the way that we're doing this. We're reading one chapter a week, and we're not reading ahead. I mean, I could keep reading and find out. I want to find out what's going on, but to stick to this format, it's hard to do that, because I want to keep going, and um, I want to just keep reading, and I don't want to read this book so fast that I miss things, but I just want to keep eating pages.
but on the opposite side of that, and I'm glad that you're bringing that up, because I feel 100% the same way, is you're meticulously breaking down these chapters week by week. You're only getting exposure to one chapter a week. You're not moving directly from the previous chapter into the next one, so you're not carrying the information from that previous chapter into the next one. So you kind of have these moments of like, I feel like I remember some of that, but like you go back and you like spot check your work, At least I do.
Yeah, I've been flipping back and forth too. It's hard not to do.
But at the same time, you have a sense of, because you're analyzing and you're breaking down these chapters, you have a good sense of what's happening at the same time. It's just some of those like connectionary pieces, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, weird tangent about podcasting books. But back to, Topper and Ganoz's interaction. I feel like there's definitely more here. That obviously they have some type of disdain towards each other, but I don't really see how they could have not liked each other after that first interaction. Because it seemed like nobody was like went out of their way to be assholes to each other. Topper did a little bit by knocking on his ignorance, but outside of that, like I really didn't get a lot of why they would not like each other.
The only thing I can really think of is that, Gnos was basically brought up rich. He didn't have to worry about a whole lot. And he's maybe just different viewpoints on, life and how they were brought up and that type of thing.
Nobility and all that stuff. But I mean, like, for somebody who is, half human and half something else, or half not human and half something else, like, how much is money really affecting, these races?
Yeah, hard to say. I'm not sure.
Yeah. How did you feel about the whole Dujek one arm being disarmed?
Yeah, I had a chuckle about that too. He's obviously that was intentional the way that was written.
Kind of a dick move. Dick move.
But this, from what we've seen in 100-ish pages, a little over 100 pages, it's a pretty brutal world. Like there's not much forgiveness anywhere. We haven't seen any type of mercy or anything like that yet. It's just all brutality.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. What's funny though is like I read the Dujek one arm needs to be disarmed, and yeah, like yourself, I had a chuckle, but at the same time, I find myself wondering, how did he lose his arm? I don't think that's been mentioned to this point.
Yeah, maybe we'll find out. But I mean, he's what, like 80 years old, damn near, right?
Mm-hmm.
79, 80 years old. He's been a military man his whole life. I would think it's reasonable to suspect that he probably lost in battle, right? Either he took an injury and it had to be amputated, or maybe it just got cleaved clean off. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But the specifics, yeah, we haven't. Yeah, I don't. I'm pretty sure we haven't seen specifics. Something like that, we'd probably remember.
Right. I would 100% agree. I also really enjoyed the visual of how Steve Erickson described Topper getting into his Imperial Warren and leaving. He described it as the Warren yawning. Like, I just imagine, like what a yawn would look like, but just with
almost like it's kind of like swallowing him.
Yeah, kind of like, like something opening up and breath of inhale and then closing again, and like just Topper being like like sucked in. It was cool to imagine.
Yeah, it almost, like, I think it's kind of like a wormhole is almost how I imagine it. It's not like a a portal where you just step through. To me, it feels like a wormhole, kind of.
Yeah,
At least the opening.
that's kind of. I mean, that would work too. As far as like a wormhole or some type of like portal, right? Again, he's not terribly descriptive, but he is descriptive. He's descriptive about like how it looks, but he's not descriptive in the way that like how it's conjured or how it's so far anyway.
Yeah, it's just kind of left to our imagination so far.
Which I'm fine with. Like I'm not having an issue with that.
No, me neither.
So basically, Ganoz is on his boat, making his way to uh, somewhere, and Topper essentially just shows up and reminds him of his mission of what Adric Morn and Ganoz have talked about. But in the process, Ganoz is basically getting the interpretation from Topper that not only does he have to kill this girl, but he also has to kill Dujek and pretty much everybody who was following him.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a good time.
I can
Because
imagine.
you're going to be a pretty unpopular guy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. Yeah, like I mentioned, I feel like I should have more to talk about, but I feel like the summary does a really good job of describing what it is that took place in this segment. And there really isn't much to talk about outside of uh Gano's and Topper's interactions and some of like the cool oddities of the segment.
Right.
What do you think? Do you have anything to
No,
elaborate on this piece part?
the only thing I kind of wonder about with Topper being in all green is they talked about and the name's escaping me right now, but there's the group that each one wears like a different color,
The
and
Moranth?
yeah, is he must be associated with that. It hasn't explicitly said, but just the way he's been described, if he's only wearing green, it just kind of makes me wonder.
Yeah, that is super curious. I mean, is he just a dirty fucker and like never washes his clothes or what? I mean, I have no idea what like inspiration he's drawing from, as far as what this is like a medieval time. Do like nobody knows how to wash their clothes or what? I mean, but
Maybe you'll
clearly,
be
Ganoz is making fun of him for it. Like, good God, man, why the fuck you wearing the same thing every time I see you?
put something else on.
Right, change your underwear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we'll have to see if your theory holds up. Maybe that's the other half. Maybe he's half Tistiandi. Maybe he's the other half is Moranth.
Yeah, could be.
Uh,
Well, we ready to move on to the second segment here? Or anything else you want to add in there?
nope. You want to take her away at the second segment here?
I will sail away with it, just like
A
just like a boat.
boat. I'll come find you after a week's time.
Boat with no hose. Sounds like a boring boat.
You think he's fucking mermaids?
No, because he's just in his cabin. All right, so segment 2. We are in the port city of Genabaris, which, according to the map at the beginning of the book, is located in the upper left side of the coast. There seems to be bustling of people on these docks, pouring over and identifying all the cargo coming off, going on the ships. We meet an agent of some sort, a burly man with big arms and narrow eyes. He's looking at a man sitting atop some crates, and he is skeptical about this being the man he is supposed to meet. The agent is studying this man, and he has some harsh criticisms. He knows that he's a captain, but notice that no soldiers are saluting him. And he thinks about the stink of nobility, to the thoughts of his uniform and the leather grip of his sword not having any stains on them. So you can see that the sword hasn't been used. This guy's to take I'm not sure if this will be a direct quote from Game of Thrones, but green as summer grass, something along those lines.
Right. Yeah. It's clean.
Yeah,
It's not used. It's, there's no signs of wear and tear, or even, a struggle.
right. So his only explanation was that the adjunct, or Lauren, must have had her head knocked during the last assassination attempt on the Empress. The agent gets up, walks over to the captain, and as the captain looks up, the agent asks for his name. The captain stands up and makes a comment about how long it took the agent to approach him. The agent observes how tall the captain is and thinks to himself how much he hates tall people. The captain starts walking down the pier, trying to overcompensate, it sounds like.
Right. That's what I got. But read on.
The captain starts walking down the pier, to which the agent catches up. They walk down the pier and make the first right onto a street. The agent explains that a green coral,
Yeah, Q-roll, coral.
Had arrived the night before, and this green coral was going to take the captain to Cloud Forest. Then from there, a black will take him from Cloud Forest to Pale. The captain gives the agent a blank stare, to which the agent asks if he's ever heard of a coral. The agent begins to explain that the Morath used corals for traveling, continuing to say that greens do most of the courier stuff. So, and that's kind of why I was thinking of Topper. He's running around trying to find Gnos.
And
he's
because
doing
he
the
seems to be some
couriering.
type of messenger.
Right.
In the two instances that we've interacted with him, he's doing something on the behalf of somebody.
Right. So the greens do most of the courier activity, and the black are stationed at Pale. They must be, like the special forces, or just, the seasoned warriors, that type of deal.
But assume that they're the black Moranth that we see walking into the city of Pale after the siege in the last chapter.
So the Morath are broken up into multiple clans and use colors for names. The captain makes a snarky comment about being dropped off 1,000 leagues away instead of being brought by boat close to the city of Pale, and that he's to ride overland. A bunch of half-human barbarians that smell like grasshoppers and dress like them too. The agent, after hearing this, has a newfound respect for the captain, even though he hates people with bigger dicks than his. I bet that's what you were talking about, wasn't it?
You're supposed to read the next sentence.
I mean, who is taller than he is? The agent picks up that the captain uses the word overland and begins to explain that the corals are flying creatures. Yes, that's coming back to me now. Like we talked, I know you read this chapter multiple times. I only read it once on Friday, but I do remember this. And he talks about you could even touch the wings if you want. You could put your hand through the wings, but don't do a quarter mile of the way up in the air, because the ground will come rushing to you quite quickly.
Yeah, which makes me think, why a quarter mile up?
It's hard to shoot something out of the sky a quarter mile up.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have missiles, if you just got bows and arrows and stuff, right?
I suppose.
But I suppose they got magic, but maybe even there's a limitation on distance. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But I thought it was cool. They gave a very, very quick description of the coral here, and having four wings that are transparent, or you could stick your whole hand through. I'm not really quite sure how to interpret that.
Right. But did you watched Dune, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I kind of almost thought of like the Thopters in Dune a little bit. I mean, I know those are mechanical, but like the four wings there, almost like a dragonfly wing.
Yeah. That's how I envisioned it too. But yeah, I totally. I don't know why this agent, has some type of issue with tall people. And he seems to be, pretty short. So yeah, like you said, just the bigger dick syndrome kind of a thing.
Right. So the captain seems to have lost his color, on the comment about being a quarter mile up in the air. And makes a comment about the intelligence reports. The agent then opens the door with a staircase behind it and mentions that he sees them before the captain does, and that life is on a need-to-know basis, to which he reminds the captain to remember. The captain simply smiles for a response and walks up the stairs. So here again, that it's a pretty straightforward point A to point B, conversation. We meet this captain, the captain from the boat. He's on the docks, and we can see that he's not getting the respect his rank should maybe not deserve, but that expects. He's just kind of walked all over.
Yeah,
and this agent, picks him out, and they have their conversation, and he takes him to where he needs to go to continue on with his mission.
And that seems to be all that, Ganoz is concerned about at this point. He makes a comment to the agent like, oh my God, it took you long enough. I have no idea who I'm supposed to approach. Right? Like, he was just told that he was going to meet somebody when he got to Pale. And he's not even at Pale yet. So, and that wasn't even explained. Like, Topper never said who he was supposed to meet, in between stages, right?
Yeah, he thought it was going to be another month till he got to Pale.
Exactly. But I do think that this agent, even though I don't think his name was ever revealed throughout this chapter, I do think that he is a Claw, though. Like, because I think it's interesting that he chose to call this guy an agent.
Yeah, just left it very nondescript.
Right. So I would call, an agent of the Claw makes sense to me. So that's what I'm assuming he is he's a member of the Claw.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know if there's really anything else in this that.
I mean, like
we
you mentioned,
need to discuss.
Very point A to point B segment, but there's mention of the Morath. That's a new thing, right? We know that these are some type of inhuman, non-human, half-human group of people that are broken up into multiple clans. I just, as soon as I read that, I think of the Aiel in Wheel of Time. So that's like where my immediate thought goes, was all of the different clans.
Mine was somewhat similar, but I was thinking more like the Ajaz, with just being devised up by color.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense too. Yeah, I see.
But it's kind of like a combination. It definitely seems like a combination of the both.
Well, and I know that 3 colors have been brought up. There was the black Morath, the green Morath, and then I feel like one of the later
gold.
Gold.
They mentioned. We don't really know what. I don't think we knew what they do.
So,
or I did not pick up on it.
I'm just curious as to, is it going to branch beyond, I guess, what I would call, the stereotypical colors, right? Your blues, your reds, your greens, your blacks, your whites, your grays,
Yeah, we got gold. That's,
I suppose that's a little bit outside of
kind of the normal.
Yeah. I'd go with that. I think it's funny.
Maybe we'll get.
Sorry, go ahead.
Periwinkle. Maybe we'll have a periwinkle.
Penis wrinkle. I think it's interesting. Well, not interesting, but more so, like, why? How does Ganoz know that these Moraths smell like grasshoppers?
Yeah,
or like
I don't know.
How does he know that they're half human barbarians? Like, what experience does he have with the Moraths? I'm just curious. It's more of a curiosity that may never come to fruition.
Just something your brain went to.
Yeah, like, do the gold Moraths smell different than the green ones? Like,
yeah, they probably smell like money.
No. These are the scented markers.
Oh.
Oh, poor.
Well, then the black one probably smells like black licorice. Then I don't want that.
I don't know. Some people dig that taste.
Not
Yeah,
me.
no, I'm good. Cool. All right. Well, on to section 3.
Take it away, my friend.
Take me away. So we come back to Tattersail. She's on her way to a meeting or debriefing with Tayshren, making her way through the Empire quarters in Pale. She is then approached by a Marine telling her that the guards had encountered a problem of some kind. Tattersail asks the Marine to, like, okay, well, what's up? Take me to whatever this problem is. The Marine takes Tattersail between two buildings, and at the end, there was a figure kneeling. Next to him was a burlap sack covered in brown stains and then surrounded by flies. Tattersail approaches Bellerden. I'm going to say Bellerden. Bellerden is still wearing clothes from the last battle 5 days ago, never moving from the spot, and has been making the guard patrol sick with the pungent smell. Tattersail feels sad and makes the comment that Bellerden looks terrible and that he needs some healing. She then looks at the burlap sack and mentions to Bellerden that Nightchill would bite his head off if she saw him now. She then continues to say that Nightchill will be taken care of, but before they can do anything, they need to regain their strength. Bellerden shakes his head and says that he will survive his wounds, and he alone will raise Nightchill's barrow. He says that Tayshren has given him leave to do so, and asks Tattersail if she would do the same. Tattersail turns from sorrow to anger at Tayshren. She then begins to explain that Nightchill being dead is his fault, and the Moon's Lord didn't have time to summon demons, but Tayshren had time to plan. Bellerden blurts out no, like very aggressively, and is seen clenching his fists. He relaxes and then says no more sorrowfully. He says that Tayshren was our protector, even from the very beginning, and asks Tattersail to remember the beginning. Bellerden reminds Tattersail that the Emperor was mad and that Tayshren had stayed by his side, stating that Tayshren helped shape the Empire's dream and opposed the Emperor's nightmares. Bellerden makes the claim that Moonspawn was simply underestimated. Tattersail at this point states that she remembers the beginning, but then thinks to herself, what is it that connects then and now? And it's eluding her at this point. She desperately, as she's having these thoughts, she desperately wants to speak with Quick Ben, but hasn't seen the bridge burners since the last battle. And since they left her with Hairlock, the Pinocchio has been scaring the shit out of her more and more every day. She breaks away from her thoughts and tells Bellerden that the Emperor had a knack for gathering the right people, and he wasn't just a fool, and he knew that the betrayal would come from that group. She continues by saying that what made us the right people was their power, and even though the Emperor was dead, the power wasn't. She has a moment of understanding and clarity about her previous thought, and half mumbles to herself that Tayshren is the thread that connects then and now. Bellerden then makes a comment that the Emperor was insane, and if he wasn't insane, he would have protected himself better. Tattersail, at the hearing of this, acknowledges that Bellerden has a point, and then asks if she could speak with him later, as she has been summoned to Tayshren. Bellerden agrees to speak later. Tattersail then turns to leave and notices that the Marine that brought her there is awkwardly kind of shuffling his feet behind her. She then turns back to Bellerden and asks if she can put a sealing spell on the burlap sack. Recognizing that the guards are unhappy, he agrees to this. And that is kind of the end of that segment.
I kind of forgotten some of this stuff a little bit, but after you were reading it, it was coming back to me, and I know I mentioned earlier, how kind of brutal this world was, that we haven't really seen any softness or empathy or anything like that. But here we did with Tattersail and Bellarden. And, the one that's hurting the most is Bellarden, and he's a giant.
Uh-huh.
He's got the biggest heart, and he's showing it, right now also. And so that just kind of struck me, not, I guess I wouldn't say ironic, but just the way that it's written, he's got his heart on his sleeve. He's not afraid to show that he's hurting and to just let his emotions go. Where somebody else, in this book, you think like Whiskey Jack or One Arm, you're probably not getting the same scene out of them as you are with this giant, right?
Yeah, we're seeing some emotion here that isn't violence or anger or hatred, or there's, as you're saying, some type of empathy and romance, right? Like Bellard and a Nightshell, like they sounds like they were a couple.
Things.
They were, dating or in a relationship, or it's not specifically said what, but they were romantic with each other.
They had a connection for sure.
Yeah. Also, you brought up giant. Thelomen is the race, I believe, that Bellarden is. So I'm assuming that Thelomen are a race of giants.
And I don't think they're like 20 feet tall, but they're obviously bigger than, a human.
Yeah, because the way that it's described when Tattersail approaches Bellarden is that because he's kneeling, his head and her head standing are aligned.
So what? He's probably like 8-9 feet tall or something like that, maybe 10. I don't know.
Tattersail, I mean, I feel like she's, I don't know, self-conscious is a bad word, but she's very down on herself, maybe insecure, because she calls herself fat, and I'm assuming that she's fairly short. So
maybe
fluffy, festively plump. But if she's short, but him kneeling comes up to her head, like I would imagine he's probably maybe like 7-8 foot.
Yeah, this seems pretty reasonable.
Is what I would go with.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, somewhere between probably 7 and 10 feet. Probably. I don't know. Just ballparking it here, throwing out ideas.
Bigger. He's larger than an average human, and I'm assuming because he is called a Thelomen that he is part of a race that is, genetically large.
This is probably why the agent hates tall people, because of these guys.
Yes, envy, dick envy.
Big dick boy.
Did you have to look up the word barrow?
I assumed it's kind of like a funeral pyre, that type of thing. Or what the hell they call, where they pile like stones on you, a cairn.
Yeah,
something like that, I imagine.
I looked it up. It's a type of mound or hill, but I had the same thought.
So
it
wasn't far off then.
So is it? Do they have some type of, like you said, pyre, or Karen on top of this mound or hill has some type of funeral ceremony? Or I question, because necromancy has been brought up quite a bit. Like, is this what Tattersail and Bellarden mean when they're like, no, we need to save our strength, or we'll worry about Night Chill when we regain our strength? Or are they simply just saying, let's take care of her funeral, saying goodbye after we've recovered?
Yeah, they're still licking their wounds and everything for sure. So
right.
I think they need to kind of regather their strength, and obviously Bellarden he's neglecting himself. He needs to seek some attention and basically get well before he can do anything.
But is it him that smells, or is it the severed head?
I imagine it's some of both.
I mean, I guess it's never stated if it's a severed head. It could just be random body parts from Night Chill.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows what's in there? That's a bag you don't want to open.
That is not a good bag of candy.
No, it's not.
Did you? So I was curious. Bellerden asked Tattersail if she would do the same because Tayshrun gave him the leave to go raise Nightchill's barrow. So I'm curious, like, is he asking her to join him, or is he asking her, like, are you gonna do that on behalf of Kala or Khaled? You know, her friend, quote unquote, pillow partner.
I guess, yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I don't know how I take that, but I mean, I suppose it's pretty literal. But I guess I didn't think about Kalat at all. I guess I kind of thought, if Bellarden had asked Tattersail, if he could go do this, would she have told him, yes, that's fine. And I think Tattersail would probably say, I will be right beside you.
I just think it's interesting that, like, now that you're mentioning it, that he hasn't been brought up since the previous chapter. And even at the end of the previous chapter, there isn't really, I think she had one statement where she kind of mourns the fact that he's not here. But then that's it. Like, that's all we get.
Well, she just got to find a new side piece. She doesn't seem that worked up about it.
Yeah, I guess it's because he was friend zoned.
Well, there's a giant that suddenly became available. So,
yeah, I don't know.
a little bit of a size difference there.
Just a little bit. But hey, whatever floats your boat, right?
That's correct.
The last thing that I had as far as comments on this section was God, I can't say that name. Bellerdan made or wait, no. Oh, yeah, Tattersail was talking about the Emperor and talking about how he wasn't a fool and that he was gathering the right people. Tattersail makes this comment that she knows that the Emperor knew that the betrayal would come from, and it said that group. I don't know what I'm assuming that group is like Lacine's group, but whatever Lacine is hasn't been revealed, right? Like whatever her race is hasn't been revealed.
No,
because I don't think we've met any other characters that have blue skin, right?
not that I can recall that's been mentioned. No.
So that's what I'm assuming that group is referred to. But I think it's funny that they're not naming that group yet.
Left ambiguous for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I also am curious about, and what are your thoughts? Because Bellerden is telling her to remember from the beginning. Like, I know that she's, 220 something odd years old. So, like, is Tattersail, was she loyal to the former emperor? Are there questions about her loyalty with Lacine? Like, it seems that Lacine's got some paranoia issues going on. Like, what is it that, like, what specifically is taking place that they're trying to remember that they're having a tough time recalling? And, like, they seem to be not being able to put the pieces together,
Well, after 200 years, yeah, maybe they got, I would imagine it might be hard to recall events, exactly as they happened. But something big and important, you think you'd kind of remember how that went, a betrayal, or, like you said, if this Empress is a little bit paranoid, you'd probably remember what got to that point.
Right. 100%. Because, I think that what they're looking for is maybe like the events that caused the betrayal, or maybe like what led up to the betrayal is maybe what they're looking for, or what they're being told to recall, I guess.
Yeah, we'll just have to see if they explain that further. I don't know if they'll kind of leave that open-ended or not.
I guess we'll just have to read and find out, as you always say.
I'm not the only one who says that.
You're the only one I ever hear it from.
Well, how many other people do you talk about books on a pretty consistent basis?
Good books? Not very many.
You're like the only other person I talk to books about.
I mean, I work with 2 librarians, so
Well,
they,
gotcha.
they,
Okay.
like when I
Hey,
tell
it's a
them
start.
about these stories, and hey, you should totally check these out, and they were also proud of me when I finished The Wheel of Time, because I was telling them that, like, hey, I started this when I was a teenager, and now
Oh,
I'm
so they weren't proud because they'd read it too. They just like, oh, you gotta. They're proud of the commitment to finish it.
correct. Yep.
Gotcha. Well, should we move on to what are we on? Up to section 4 here.
Yep.
Anything else you want to add on 3?
I got nothing.
Me too.
Read on, sir.
All right. So section 4, Kalam and Whiskey Jack look on at Pale from the hills outside the city. Whiskey Jack recalls that the last time he was on these hills that they were covered in armor and 1.5 mages. 1.5, because Hairlock was ripped into 2 pieces, and one of them was just one of those halves was just completely disintegrated.
I want to know if they found his legs. Where'd his legs go? They walked off.
I think that they became worm food, I think. So Kalam reveals through some digging that he's found out that someone high up in the nobility likely has them, quote, marked. I would venture to guess that means marked for death. Could be the nobility or the court, but rumor has it they're doing it behind the scenes so that they can not look suspicious. He also shed new light on their new captain from Unta, who we know is Ganoz. Be their 4th captain in 3 years, and none of them are worth a pile of shit. Quick Ben says to Whiskey Jack that he knows the plan, which when I read that, to me, and we'll get to this, I think that sure sounds like some foreshadowing. The Morant have ravaged Pale in their, quote, hour of retribution, which I think must be kind of like, they've got like free reign to do whatever way they want. And that kind of reminds me of the ale taking their 5th a little bit, but this sounds like they're taking lives and not valuables. The streets ran with blood, and the number of hills outside the city would grow. And they would grow because of the bodies they drag out there. But nobody would remember the soldiers who died outside the city. A low-level officer of Teshren had delivered a speech to, the handful of survivors that were left. And within hours, he was found garroted, strangled with a cord, and nobody gave a fuck at all. Kalam thinks a claw was behind it. Maybe it was the new recruit. Sorry. But she would be awfully young for a claw. They go through 15 years of training, and they generally start at the age like 5 or 6. And they say this girl looks like she is like 15-ish years old. But with some of Teshren's magic, it's not 100% out of the question that they could do some type of like glamoring to make her look younger, something like that. They discuss why the Empress would want to kill her own people, maybe to wipe out, any remnant of the old empire, but Whiskey Jack doesn't buy it. He says they're dying just fine on their own, and anyone hardly remembers the old emperor's name anyways. They think that maybe the Empress more likely wants the memory of the old empire to die, but the bridge burners, they seem to have their own plan against the Empress. Basically, they want to play the same game and clean clean her house out, and get things kind of back to the way that they were before. Seems like they have some plans to use Sorry, especially if Hairlock breaks out of his Pinocchio form. They might need Sorry because it sounds like she's pretty powerful, and she might be about the only thing that can keep Hairlock in check. So they're a little uneasy about not taking her out right now, but they decide just to proceed for the time being. About that time, Sorry and Fiddler arrive. Clum and Whiskey Jack ride out to see if the new captain is here. And there was, I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but as it was written, seems to be a mutual mistrust between Whiskey Jack and his horse. And out of all the lines that we've read in this book so far, it just stuck out. If you got a war horse, that's an animal you got to trust. And he doesn't trust the horse doesn't trust him. Why does he still have this horse then? Why doesn't he get a different one? But that's the end of that section.
It doesn't make any sense, does it? Like, it seems like a very odd thing for a reader to read. Like,
yeah, but it doesn't feel like a throwaway line either.
No, not at all. Like, there's definitely something there, but what? Who knows? Anyway, I want to hear your foreshadowing thing that you were talking about.
So who was it here? Quick Ben. Quick Ben says that he knows the plan for Whiskey Jack. So, we'll get to it here. We know at the end of the chapter. Let's come back to this. I don't want to get too far ahead. Let's come back.
You want to come back?
I want to come back to it. Yeah,
makes sense.
But it feels like it falls in line to me. And it'll make sense when we get there. Well, maybe it'll make sense. To me, it makes sense. What other plan is there? So that's about all I can say for right now.
Right. Totally understand. And I feel like I've got an idea on where you're going to go, because in chapter 2, I had suspicions that I think we may align with, but I'll wait until you reveal what it is you've got cooking. The only other thing so Hairlock, right? Like, it's revealed as to what his deal was with the bridge burners here. Did you catch that?
The soul shifting?
No. Yeah, that was the bridge burners deal, but what did you catch what the bridge burners want Hairlock to do? They called him the snake in the grass. So basically he's doing a recon. Like I guess I would just call it he's the inside man.
Okay.
Which
I don't know. I'm not sure if I picked up on that, or I don't necessarily remember that exactly. So fill me in.
Gotcha. So during this section, they're talking about Hairlock's Hairlock. They don't specifically say like, this is the deal. We soul shift Hairlock. He's our inside man. It's just a very quick sentence like, Hairlock, that's Hairlock's job. Something along the lines of, he is our snake in the grass. And I just kind of put 2 and 2 together like, oh, so that is what he's doing for these bridge burners. And it makes sense because either Hairlock has innate hatred for Taishren, or in some previous thing that we haven't read, they're enemies of some kind. But like Hairlock hates Taishren.
Yes, we do know that because who did he tell? He said he mentioned that to Tattersail because he said, "You're the only one who hates him more than me. So I know you're not going to betray me."
Exactly. So there's definitely some shit starting to be introduced, and I think maybe this is the genius part of what I feel is the genius part of this chapter in its entirety, is that there is so much that you have to pick out. It seems like a very straightforward chapter as you read through it, but when you go through it with a fine-tooth comb, you start to pick out these things that are like, oh, some of these things that you read in the previous chapters are starting to kind of like fall into place, at least for me anyway.
Things make a little bit more sense.
Exactly. Like, Gano's, like they know that Gano's is taking over or, taking command. He's on his way here. They're on the lookout for him. Uh, yeah, it's just everything that we've read up to this point seems to be kind of diverging into one story arc, so to speak, right? Like we've got Gano's, who we've had in the prologue, and then the first chapter diverging with Tattersail and Taishren and Dujek and Whiskey Jack from second chapter, all kind of in the same location.
Right.
But I feel like
things are coming.
Go ahead.
They're kind of coming together here.
Yes, they are. I feel like we'll probably get back to section 4 a little bit because there are some foreshadowing things. So do we want to kind of go back to our thoughts and theories after we've summarized everything?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think if we want to move on here to the next section, I think it would be a good time.
Let's do it.
All right, let her rip.
I think this was probably one of my favorite sections. Tattersail is standing behind Taishren, standing on some ramparts of the city of Pale. He is overlooking the plains and the hills below. Out of the blue, Taishren says, "Bridge burners," and startles Tattersail. She then steps up beside Taishren and sees a squad of soldiers on horses running down a hillside towards the city. She right away recognizes that it is Whiskey Jack and his company of bridge burners. Taishren vocalizes this to Tattersail and then says to her that it's the same squad she met after Moonspawn's retreat. He then claps her on her back and tells her to come on because he requires a reading. Before the reading begins, Taishren makes a comment to Tattersail about matters of the Empire, that he is the servant of the Empress. Oh, sorry. Taishren makes the comment to Tattersail that matters of the Empire, that he is the servant of the Empress. Tattersail being reminded of her arguments at the debriefing earlier, where nothing was solved. She makes a remark about going to the Empress directly, to which Taishren interprets as sarcasm. Tattersail pulls out the deck of dragons and locks eyes with Taishren. Taishren then asks about the spinning coin, to which Tattersail freezes. Taishren then quickly asks for the first card, to which Tattersail breathes a sigh of relief. Tattersail can feel something open, and Ascendant is reaching through her, feeling cool and fickle, is how this Ascendant coming in is described. So I'm assuming that it's some type of warren that she's open up, like her tier warren that she described in the previous chapter. With eyes shut, she flips the first card, which is an unaligned orb, which stands for Judgment and True Sight card. The second card she pulls is the Virgin of High House Death. At that same moment of this card being pulled, she hears the rumbling of horses' hooves running towards, then beneath her, and then behind her. She flips the third card over, and it frightened her, and it's the Assassin High House Shadow card. The fourth card is the Opon, with, as we saw in the last chapter, with the lady up and the man down low, which we know is the gesture or luck, or she makes the comment that the coin continues to spin and looks upon many. As she pulls out the fifth card, she refers that card to the spinning coin and looks upon many. And she pulls out the fifth card. She calls it their card, as in associating it with the coin. It's another unaligned card, a crown, facing up, or, the crown is not upside down, which, if it's right side up, it stands for wisdom and justice. She makes the association that this must be Jerujistan, which is the last free city. The way closes and the ascendant leaves. Taishren makes a comment that Tattersail has gone beyond what he's managed and compliments her on her source/ascendant, but doesn't like its message. Taishren then asks for Tattersail's interpretation of the reading. Tattersail takes a moment to herself and contemplates giving him an explanation. She decides that if she did, it would leave him more rattled than he already was. Tattersail begins her explanation by saying that deception is the patron assassin's forte. She suspects that the rope is on his own and to beware the assassin. She then comments on Opan plays games in their own version, and it's the same game. The twins of luck have no control in Shadow's realm. Taishren and Tattersail conclude the reading, and Taishren continues his study of the mountains off in the distance, while Tattersail descends the stairs. When she stops at a landing and thinks to herself, admits that she misled Taishren. She could guess the virgin's identity, which she neglected to tell Taishren. She goes back to the rumbling of Whiskey Jack's horses and his squad entering the city. When she read that card, she immediately thought recruit. She continues down the stairs and reaches the common ground where she sees the Marine from earlier. She calls him over and asks him what he's doing, to which he replies, "We're waiting for weapon distribution." Tattersail tells him to ignore that and that he is to deliver a message to Whiskey Jack. She says that the fat sorceress would like to meet and talk. She tells him to repeat it and then tells him to return the message to her and that she'll be in her quarters. Yeah, that's essentially that. It was kind of fun dissecting the different cards. And I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but there is a glossary in the back of the book.
I haven't
that has this, the deck of dragons, the Fatid, and associated ascendants. So I'm assuming ascendants are some type of like interpreter, potentially, is what I'm getting from it. But if we go back and we look at the second card she flips, or I'm sorry, the third card she flips that she is frightened by is the assassin of High House Shadow. So if we go back to the glossary and I see High House Shadow, the assassin, the rope, is Cotillion.
And he was the one with the hounds, right?
No, that was Amanus.
Okay. I couldn't remember which one was which.
Amanus is a short one.
So do you think Amanus was the agent on the dock?
I mean, Cotillion is definitely in play here, but in High House Shadow, King, Shadow Throne / Amanus. So they're definitely working in cahoots with each other, which we know from the previous chapter. I think it's funny that this deck of dragons is also revealing they're working together, because she even says in her, beware the assassin. And then a part that I left out in the summary was something to do with the House of Shadows or something. Like, do not be fooled. because of the House of Shadows and the rope. And just so you take Amanus, you take Cotillion, you take the Opon, which is, luck, right? Essentially luck. Like eventually, like the shadow, these shadow is, you're gonna run out of luck is what I'm getting from this deck of cards. And the fact that this virgin card that was flipped over is kind of alluding to this girl, this recruit. Sorry.
Right.
Like some dark shit is definitely like on the horizon.
Brewing. Right. And they both hear this coin spinning. That kind of like gave her like pause. It caught her off guard. So what's going to happen when this coin stops spinning? Is that when Sari's going to make her move?
It's a great question. I mean, it literally could mean anything, right? Like, there's so many things that, spinning of a coin stopping could be. It could be her death, right? It could be some big event, I mean, yeah. I'm curious as to see what it is. I liked the segment a lot.
I could tell.
Yeah. I really
you did a good job on
it. Thank you. And I like small details like this, and it would have been cool to have some type of understanding on like how to play this game or how to read these deck of dragons, but the author is just throwing you right into it, so you kind of have to take that second moment to be all like, okay, what is this into a relationship to what we know so far? And I enjoy doing some of that kind of stuff. I'm probably way off on a lot of things, but I tried.
You're giving it a damn good effort, and who knows, you might not be far off.
It may not be, and I don't even care if I am or not. Like, it's still fun to try to dissect what it is that we have. So
exactly, yeah, it don't matter.
Right.
Like you said, we're just doing this for fun.
Yeah. And Tattersail, I see why she left out the virgin card in her explanation to Taishran, right? Because why would she delve that? Why would she give up that information?
Yeah, it's more beneficial to hold that back, for sure, I think.
100%. And super off topic, but as he's describing the rumbling of horses coming to, and then like getting louder as they're approaching and going underneath her, and then fading off as they ride behind her, I was just like, that was a very cool way of describing the Doppler effect.
I would not have thought of that.
I don't know why I thought of it either, but I just thought that was a really cool way of describing the Doppler effect. Yeah.
Nice pickup, man.
But yeah.
Well, anything else?
No, there's a lot that happened, I feel, in this, that some of it I feel like I understand, some of it I don't think that I quite get, but I think there's enough to go off of, and what I don't get, I think, will be revealed in good time.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. Do you have any thoughts on this section?
No, I know you said this one was one of your favorite parts of the chapter, and to me, again, I only read it once, 2 or 3 times, but it did not stick with me as much as it did with you.
Well, I mean, when I first read it too, it didn't stick with me either.
So maybe if I read it more than once, it might have. But I think the part that stuck with me the most was, the third part with Bellardan and Night Chill. That was probably the most impactful to me.
I mean, like I mentioned, the author is throwing you into this tarot reading, right? This deck of dragons reading, and you as the reader don't have any understanding on what any of this is. So, yeah, it's almost, I mean, I almost hate to say it, but it's almost required that you read it a couple of times just to really understand what it is that is these cards mean. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you're just taking away from this chapter that, oh, they had a reading of some kind. I don't know what I meant. You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've seen these cards enough. I'm sure they'll come up again.
And it seems to be, I mean, religion is probably the bad way to go about it, but it seems to be some type of a way of predicting the future. I know that, again, in previous chapters, they talk about gifts or talents, right? Like, is this a part of a sorcerer's repertoire, or, you know, or can some do? Obviously, Taishran can do it too, but not quite as, um, not
Good as
quite,
Tattersail.
yeah. Because I know that she makes a comment that it was nice to have a conversation with somebody, you know, adept to the deck of dragons, but clearly she knows more about it and or has more experience with it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
cool.
Well, you ready for part 6 here?
Let's do it.
All right. So we go back to Gnos. He is on the top of a plateau and he watches the Black Morath disappear. These were the guys who had their hour of retribution in the city. He looks onto the city of Pale. It looks peaceful enough, but there's definitely evidence of a battle. He notices people fixing the walls of Pale. There's wagons leaving the city going out to the hills, and he can see mounds that look, quote, too regular to be natural. So they're just piling bodies outside the city there. I imagine they'd be burned at some point. He's heard rumors that 5 mages were killed here, and 2 of them were high mages. Moonspawn has retreated south across the Talon Mountains to Lake Azure, but one rumor has stuck with him that the bridge burners were gone. Some stories said killed to a man. Others said that a few had made it out. The information that he had was old, and he had an unfamiliar feeling about it. A rider arrives to Gnos, a member of the Claw. Half of this guy's face had been burnt away, and he had an eye patch over his right eye. Gnos asks if what he's heard about the bridge burners is true, and the rider says more or less, and that there was approximately 40 survivors. The rider asks if he's Whiskey Jack's new captain, but the rider already kind of knew this. So they're riding towards Pale, and the Claw tells them that Whiskey Jack had a pretty big following, and then that in the past he ran his own company. And Gnos was shocked by this because that information was basically stricken from the records of the Empire. It wasn't recorded anywhere. But Whiskey Jack had the 7th Company, and him and his company had ended a war in the past. And after that, everything went to hell. The Claw tells Gnos that Taishran is running the show. Dujek doesn't like it, but Taishran has the Empress's ear, basically, and that's why he's still got power. And especially what happened after the fight with Moonspawn, Dujek's really not happy about that. It's a tense situation. Dujek's soldiers will follow him anywhere, do anything for him. So to be aware of that. The Claw sends Gnos on his way and says to focus on what is in front of him, and the peripherals will work themselves out. The Claw gives Gnos his name and says he is Talk the Younger, and leaves him to find his way. So again, here there's it's a lot of telling us what's going on. There's not a lot to really dissect on it. It's just kind of giving us the lay of the land here. Telling them, give them a little bit of backstory on Whiskey Jack. That this guy's he's pretty big time, right? Like he had a company, and now he's got roughly 40 guys, but he's used to commanding more than that. Um, and he's been through the ringer.
Yeah, and I feel like all of this backstory with Whiskey Jack is great because I feel like it furthers our theory about the prologue, right? Like he's clearly had a fall from grace of some kind. And I'm wondering if it goes all back to the interaction between Lacine and this unnamed captain, which I'm speculating is Whiskey Jack.
I would agree with you. I think it is.
And even in Ganoz's thoughts to himself throughout this chapter about of that interaction, there's a lot of things. I mean, again, the author's not directly saying that it was Whiskey Jack, but Perrin himself is going back to that moment in time in small little ways. So, and the fact that, as you mentioned in the summary of the section, is his history of his campaign has been erased. So at this point, it's all just word of mouth, right?
Right.
And Ganoz is even skeptical about, like, okay, well, how much of this is actually true? As he and this Talk the Younger the Claw are riding from where the Black Morath dropped him off outside of the city of Pale into the city of Pale's gates. We also know a little bit more information about the Morath, is that they have a very unrecognizable language. And Perrin doesn't like the fact that he couldn't understand his 2-day adventure with the Black Morath.
Well, yeah, if you're just sitting there and everybody else is speaking a different language, I probably wouldn't like it either. I'm gonna wonder what the hell's going on.
Right. Yeah. Are they talking shit about me or what's going on? Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's just this segment is purely a transitional piece. Like we see this is where Ganoz enters the stage, right? This is where he starts to be incorporated into the location that we were made familiar with last chapter. All right, well, I guess we'll move on, right?
Yeah, I don't really. Yeah, again, all these things are pretty just straightforward. There's not. I don't. Not a lot to interpret here. I don't feel like.
No, not in this particular segment, and I feel like this segment was a page and a half, maybe. They talk about Whiskey Jack's past as they're riding into the city, and I feel like we've touched on that. Pew. After Talk the Younger's leave, Perrin has some dark thoughts about himself and his nobility, or his upbringing, thinking to himself about how his noble upbringing has allowed him to be as discreet as Lorne has needed him to be. Thoughts about how he's used to being used, and that his overblown faith in honesty and integrity has been replaced with something cold, dark, hard. Cold, hard, and dark. Perrin enters the barracks of what was once the noble guard of Pale. The place is empty except for a woman lying on a cot with her hands behind her head. He asks her questions about where the 9th Squad would be and where her commander would be. She seems to be playing fast and loose with some sarcasm. Doesn't seem to be taking this the interaction seriously and acting like she doesn't want to be bothered. She replies that her captain is named Antsy and that he can be found at a place called Knob Inn, playing cards with a man named Hedge. This woman reveals herself as Picker, and as Ganoz introduces himself as the new captain, she quickly comes to stand at attention to her commanding officer. Behind him, the outer door bangs open, and the sergeant with a handlebar mustache strides past Ganoz and right to Picker, and gets kind of confrontational with her about gambling or losing to Hedge at this Knob Inn. Picker quickly points out to the sergeant, hey, meet our new captain. To which he turns and meets Ganoz. Ganoz asks where he can find Whiskey Jack. The sergeant then tells Ganoz that a Marine had came to deliver a message to Whiskey Jack and that he had left. The sergeant tells Ganoz a few of Whiskey Jack's people are at the Knob Inn up the street. Again, super short. I think this was like maybe a page or two, but we know that the messenger that Tattersall had sent to Whiskey Jack had arrived shortly before Ganoz. Is kind of what I'm deducing to this. And we meet Picker, and the fact that they're being named, or they're naming her, tells me that she may have a future role in this book, or with Paran.
Yeah, to me, there wasn't a ton in here that was probably super necessary information. He went to the barracks. He found out where, who he's looking for is basically at the bar playing cards, except for Whiskey Jack. We don't exactly know where he's at. He's out. That's kind of it, right?
Essentially, I mean, he's coming into an uncomfortable, well, maybe not uncomfortable, but like an unknown environment, right? And he has some type of, command, or well, can't think of the word, but he has.
His rank isn't recognized again, because this soldier's just relaxing on her bed when he walks in, not recognizing that he's a captain.
Right, based off his clothes. It's not until he introduces himself as the captain where she like, oh, fuck, I should get this together. But yeah, again, I interpreted it as a transitional segment. Ganoz is into the city. He's kind of gathering his reins, so to speak, finding out what he needs to find out, and that's essentially getting to the squad he's supposed to command. The squad of bridge burners, excuse me. He's supposed to command.
Right.
All right, you want to take it away on our last chapter, our last section here?
Yeah, this some stuff happens. We'll say that. So, Ganoz enters the Knob Inn, and it's filled with the Second Army from what he can see, and a few bridge burners from insignia that he could recognize. He sees a Barghast, who's the only Barghast in the bridge burners. So Ganoz knows that he's found the right squad. He joins the table where they're playing cards, and he is recognized by one of the soldiers or players. They introduce themselves, and we meet Hedge, Mallet, and Trots. Trots is the Barghast. Ganoz asks for the average life expectancy of an officer. Excuse me. And Hedge asks if he wants to know pre-moon spawn or post-moon spawn. And Mallet answers with about 2 campaigns, and balls aren't enough. You need to forget everything you've learned and jump into your sergeant's lap, and maybe you'll make it. Gano states that he's heard that most officers are terrified of the bridge burners, and he's heard that the mortality rate is so high because most officers end up with a dagger in their back. Gano says from what he's heard, what he's seen so far, that he believes it to be true, and that he ends up with a dagger in his back that he damn well better have deserved it, or otherwise he's going to be disappointed. Gano stands up and is ready to leave, and one of the soldiers asks if he'd like to stay and play around. Gano's responds that it's unprofessional to take his enlisted soldiers' money. He's on his way back to the barracks, and he hears just an ever so slight sound behind him, and he turns around to see a shadowy figure. This figure closes the distance very quickly. Gano sees a blade in each hand. He takes a dagger in the chest, and he takes one in his side. Yeah, not good. And after he's stabbed, two other figures show up. None other than Amanus and Cotillion. We find out that their motivation is towards Lucine because she rules the Empire, but they do not feel that she's earned it. So, from section 4, when Quick Ben tells Whiskey Jack that he knows the plan, I feel like this is what they were talking about. They knew that they were going to take the captain out basically immediately.
So, and this is where when the bridge burners approached Tattersail after the siege of Pale, right? Like we've got Quick Ben and then Kalam, mages and wizards next to Whiskey Jack, but they're also accompanied with Sari. So my initial thought back in the second chapter was that this was actually Amanus and Quick Ben, or Quick Ben and Kalam are Amanus and Cotillion in disguise as Quick Ben and Kalam. Okay. And they're using Sari, right? Like, but then again, it doesn't explain, because like I know Quick Ben in that section 4 was said to be like afraid, like he's afraid of Sari.
Yeah,
I guess you were right. I think you nailed it on the head. I think it was 2 episodes ago where you were like, or maybe it was last episode, you were like, I think that they're just using her to like infiltrate the bridge burners or something.
I don't remember what I said, so I'll just take your word on it. And thanks for the compliment. Last week was a long time ago.
Yes, it was a long time ago.
It was a whole 7 days ago.
Dude, I was not expecting this. I really wasn't. I was not expecting to read him being fucking stabbed.
No, me neither. Not at all. And when I read it, my jaw definitely dropped. I did not see it coming, and my gut tells me he's probably done for, but I guess we don't know for sure yet. You know, we haven't seen anybody be healed or anything yet, and I mean, you take a knife wound to the chest and to the side, you're pretty well fucked. I mean, if somebody doesn't get to you in like seconds, you're probably gonna bleed out, right? Like I think he's toast.
Yeah, I don't want him to be dead. I don't want him to be dead, but I just think it's so fucked up that as he's being stabbed and he's, on the ground, he's hearing and recognizing these different accents, right? From, I think one was Canese, which was the girls, and Turan recognizes that this young child stabbed him twice. And Amanus and Cotillion are fucking giggling like little girls about it.
All while somebody's actively dying in front of you. Like, they don't give a shit.
Exactly. Also, and I totally forgot to bring this up, but in the Deck of Dragons uh segment with Tattersail, she makes this mention because she's got her eyes closed and she's seeing what I'm assuming are visions behind her eyes from this ascendant. And when she's reading one of the deck of cards, she sees hounds, which you immediately associate with the Manus because his hounds were the ones that massacred like 1,400 people in Ikito Khan.
I think that answers the age-old question of who let the dogs out.
It was a Manus. He let the dogs out.
That son of a bitch.
That son of a bitch. Yeah, I hope he's not dead. I was starting to really like recognize Gano's as the main character. So, as much as I don't want him to die, on the other side of the hand, like it would be pretty unconventional for this character to be killed off. Even if he does die, there's been so much talk about necromancy that how hard would it be? I don't know. I guess it could go anywhere, and I'm glad that we're done with this episode because the suspense has been killing me.
I kind of feel like we'll probably shift and see a lot more Whiskey Jack. Like I said, my personal feeling is that he's done for, because I don't know why you would go through and write that only to have him be miraculously saved. My gut tells me he's done, and things will probably shift, and that he's served his purpose. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Because as we discovered in section 4, right? Like, Quick Ben knows the plan. Whiskey Jack is in agreement with his comrades that, hey, we need to switch gears here. We need to start doing the same thing the Empire is trying to do to us. Like, they figured it out, right? Like, clearly the Empire doesn't want anybody that was loyal or even to the memory of the old Emperor to be alive. Even though at this point in time, not very many remember. But Lucine seems to be so paranoid about it that she just wants to eradicate anybody prior to her.
She's a little cray-cray.
A little cray-cray. So it would make sense why, are Amanus and Cotillion, like, are they in cahoots with Whiskey Jack, Quick Ben, and Kalam? Or is this just like, do we have two separate entities going after the same? Like, I think that Cotillion and Amanus got to Gano's first. But that begs the question, like, how did they know? Like, how is it that they're getting their information? Is it directly from Sari? Like, is she the common denominator between Whiskey Jack and the Bridge Burners, and then Amanus and Cotillion?
I don't know, man. There's just like plots within plots, and it seems like there's deals and side deals, and everybody's double crossing everybody. It kind of feels like
it's starting to get intense. Things are definitely starting to get ramped up, but I don't know if it's you or me, dude, but like I feel like we got to 100 pages real quick. I guess 4 weeks isn't quick, plus. But 4 weeks is nowhere near quick to the average reader, but I feel like it's gone fast.
Yeah, and it's been a ton of fun.
It has been very enjoyable. Well, I guess that bids it would do, huh?
Yeah, with this, we've got we'll be on chapter 4 here, which will be the last chapter in this Book of Pale, and then we will move on to Darujistan and see what kind of mess that brings.
Yeah, I mean, there was some foreshadowing of Whiskey Jack and his nightmare, right? Like he's having a premonition that shit's only going to get worse, and it's the last free city. Clearly, Lucine has conquered quite a bit.
Yeah, we'll have to see if we find out what happened. these other free cities.
100% agree. I'm looking forward to revealing more and then talking about it.
It was always fun. It was always a good time. It's only been 4 episodes, but I'm nowhere near sick of this yet.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. It's cool being able to like banter about different things or catching, something that like you see completely different and just talking about it.
Yeah, we've both caught different things. I feel like so it's been good.
I think it just makes the experience of the book that much more magical.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're on Twitter, give us a follow. D&J Epic Q. Stop by, say hello, drop us a line, let us know what you think.
Yeah, you can also find us on iTunes, not iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and then you can also find us on Spotify and Anchor. Hopefully, we'll get up and running on Google Podcasts here real quick. But outside of that, take it easy, and we'll talk to you later.
See you soon, friends.